The Mental Health Series is brought to you by Micro Gains and Dominion Strength. Both are longtime friends and sponsors of the Barbell Logic podcast, and neither hesitated for a second in wanting to sponsor a series that they know is incredibly important to so many people. Both companies are true small businesses, American-owned, and 100% of all their products are made here in the United States. You'll hear more about that later in the show. For the finest quality fractional plates, visit microgains.com. That's with a Z, microgains with a Z.com. And for the highest quality leather belts, go to dominionstrengthtraining.com. Both use discount code LOGIC for a significant discount off their products exclusively for Barbell Logic listeners.
Welcome to Barbell Logic. Rewind.
Welcome to the Barbell Logic podcast. I'm Scott Hamrick. We have Matt Reynolds, and today we have psychiatrist, the shrink for the strength, Dr. David Puder. He has his own podcast that Uncle Trent, producer Trent, also produces. So it's the, Psychology and Psychiatry podcast? Is that the name of that show?
Psychiatry and Psychotherapy.
See, I get it backwards.
Very original.
Right.
I was going for what people would search.
Right.
No, I'm just playing.
Gosh, I don't even know what we're going to talk about today, but I've spoken with David many, many times, and it always have good conversations. Huh? Thinking I would be nutrition. Maybe.
I bet it ain't nutrition. I'm excited to get an hour free. So, I'm used to paying $115 a week. No, I didn't. No, she raised her price. $125 a week to go see my therapist. And I'm just excited to get a free one.
She lowered my price.
Really? Is that how it worked?
Matt, when you said that, there was a bit of frustration on your face. I just want to check in with how that felt
no,
to
I want to
pay
be
for that.
psychoanalyzed. I'm fine. Let's do it, man. Put it out there. So, open book over here. So
David is a psychiatrist, so he is an MD as well.
that means he can give you the good drugs, is what that means, right?
That's right.
That's right.
And I thought we might kick off this by talking a little bit about testosterone replacement therapy. Well,
Yeah, let's do it.
go.
So testosterone replacement therapy. I think, first of all, it's important to talk about the fears that people have with replacing testosterone, like if they really need it. People think, oh, it's bad for the prostate, or, oh, it causes cardiac issues. First with the prostate, well, if you've had prostate cancer, it's contraindicated. But otherwise, in like this huge meta-analysis, it showed it actually only increased PSA like 0.1. So it's a very, very small increase in the PSA, which is kind of like how we measure prostate, what's going on in the prostate. So it seems pretty safe for the prostate. And then cardiac and stroke, does it increase those things? There's been, where they look at like multiple studies at once, and they found that it doesn't cause any cardiac issues or stroke issues if you look at all of the studies together. So
We're talking about hormone replacement therapy, not 5 grams of testosterone a week like an IFBB pro bodybuilder, right? I mean, is some of it just this sort of cultural implication of, I see the bodybuilders on TV, I see Barry Bonds, I see these guys. Like, that's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about these like super high levels. We're talking about replacing the thing that is lost as you age.
yeah, so that's a good distinction because those are two very different things.
Yeah, I'm on it. I've got a friend I was talking to, Dallas. I've talked about Dallas on the show. We need to have him one day. I said, man, I just fall asleep at my desk about 2:00. I just like black out, and I was actually having a little double vision, and sleep quality's terrible, and he said, you've got low testosterone. And I went and had it checked, and sure enough, it was like
11.
It was like 100. I think it was 120.
Wow.
Was it micrograms per deciliter?
Barely 3. Yeah. That's crazy. Barely 3 digits.
Yeah.
You are almost double-digit testosterone.
Got on that. And here's what happens when you get on this stuff if you need it. You get a shot and you're like, going to feel better in 5, 4. No, it doesn't work like that. Like 6 weeks later, you just feel normal again. Like you're not drowsy at your desk in the afternoon. You just feel normal again. It's not like you're not walking around with like this diamond cutter, all libidinous, you just feel normal again. which is a big deal, because like everybody's dad, they're like, dad once he hit 60, he really mellowed out. Well, he became a woman. His testosterone went away and he was like low energy, didn't want to do anything. He'd fall asleep in his chair watching golf or whatever. And if he got on testosterone replacement therapy, he would just feel like he did when he was 35 again. He would want to do things and he would sleep better. And that's my experience of it.
So let me go through the signs and symptoms that you may be low T, okay? Reduced sexual desire, activity, reduced spontaneous erections, so you're not getting erections in the morning.
That brings up how blue your eyes are as I look at you here on Zoom today.
Spontaneous erection.
Look at those blue eyes.
He does
It's
have really
amazing.
blue eyes.
Yeah.
Me too. But you crush
We
me
all
on
do.
those eyes.
What's the odds of that?
Poof. Crushing it.
Oh, gosh.
We should do commercials.
Wait, why did you free associate blue eyes when I start talking
Because
about
he got a
reduced sexual
non-spontaneous
desire?
erection, in fact, while looking at your blue eyes.
That's right.
All right, sorry. So back to signs of low T.
decreased energy, decreased motivation, decreased initiative, decreased spontaneous confidence. So I would say, like, if those things have always been low for you, it might not be testosterone, but if all of a sudden in your 40s, you're like, what is going on?
Just don't want to do anything anymore. I don't enjoy the things I used to enjoy. Yeah.
Feeling sad or blue, depressed mood, dysthymia. So sometimes when patients come to me, I've caught a couple of these where they're struggling with depression. And, as I go through the history, they have low libido, they have low energy, they have low motivation, they have poor concentration, poor memory, they have sleep issues. So another thing of low T is like issues, which is poor sleep and increased sleepiness in general. And then reduced muscle bulk and strength. So, it's been harder to walk upstairs, a couple flight of stairs. And then increased body fat or BMI. So then, the fat kind of goes in the wrong places for men when you're lower T.
Yeah, I see these guys that come to me for coaching and they're sort of pear-shaped, kind of get the big rump,
Well, especially if they're younger.
Yeah.
Like if they're younger and they have female patterned, what would typically be described, right? So they have relatively lean face, narrow shoulders, fatty sort of breast tissue, and fatty thighs and hips. So you'll see like I realize this is like super blanketed statements as I typically make on the podcast, but you'll see apple-shaped females. It doesn't really look too strange. I mean, it might not be our sort of cultural norm for something we'd be sexually attracted to, but like you see apple-shaped women very often, but a pear-shaped man sort of sticks out. You're like, wait a minute, something not right there. And
you said a
Peter's
word.
laughing. Hey man, if
You
you're,
said a word, I don't
if you're
know.
31 and you're pear-shaped, you go get your testosterone checked.
Yep. You said dysthymic. I don't know that word.
Dysthymic. So that's just like a general low mood that's chronic and been going on for a while.
That's Scott. Like pessimism all the time.
I told you I was low.
That's totally Hambrick. You just described him right there. Like the sky is falling. This is what he says all the time. He's just like the little chicken.
Well, but it's interesting because Scott is on some testosterone replacement. Did that sort of negativity go away, or is that still there?
Oh, it's been there since I was conscious. My first memory was hating everything.
It was conceived in anger.
Yeah.
So can't do anything about it. In vitro, it screwed him up.
Oh, man.
So I was weight training before I got on the stuff. And my experience of the testosterone replacement and weight training was that it improved my ability to recover some, but it wasn't a day and night difference. I mean, I can't really go to my training log and say, like, I actually wrote in my training log when I started. I remember when it was. I could go look it up. But if you just graphed my progress and then had to go find like an inflection point and you're like, this is when he started T, I don't think you could find it.
But you know what you could find?
What?
If you stop taking it for the next 2 months,
Yeah.
you'd see the crash.
Yeah.
So there is like, mid-level evidence for improvement in body composition, improvement in muscle strength. But there's actually also a good meta-analysis that was done in 2017 where they looked at how it improves sexual function, erectile function, quality of life, and depression. So that's where I'm really interested is the quality of life and depression. I mean, and libido, of course, as well. Because I have a lot of guys who come to me and they're like, hey, what's going on with my sexual function? Or really, they don't ask that, but it's like I'm about to leave your office and, oh yeah, Dr. Puder, by the way, kind of thing. Like men don't want to say, Dr. Puder, I just don't have sexual desire like I used to. So that's one thing I talk to men about a lot.
Yeah. A lot of times it's like their frog's getting boiled.
Yeah.
Right. Like, their testosterone drop in a few percentage points a year. And next thing you know, they're 49. And I think some of these guys don't even realize what has happened to their libido.
Yeah, it's a little bit at a time.
They're like, oh, I'm not 18 anymore. It's like, yeah, but you're not even 48 either. Like,
Right.
you're andropause. You're 70.
Yeah.
But I think it's important also to throw out here is you could have these very same symptoms and have like obstructive sleep apnea.
Yeah.
And that's another big thing that men in their 40s and 50s or even 30s. I have this one friend who just got tested. He's in his 30s and he's tired all the time, and his libido's low. He got tested. He has severe obstructive sleep apnea, which means like throughout the night, 100 or 200 times, he stops breathing for 20 to 30 seconds.
And then chokes.
And then goes, he goes like this, and it's like the brain is like missing oxygen for that little part. You don't get into the deeper sleep. You don't get the more restful sleep. And it's taken him months. And he's like a smart guy. He's a well-educated guy. He's a motivated guy to get this done. It's taken him months to get the sleep study, to get the results, to get the prescription.
Yeah, to actually get the CPAP.
And then to get the titration.
Yep.
So I would say, if you're a guy listening to this and you're like, why am I depressed? Number one, check your testosterone. Number two, get a sleep study. And then number three, do you have chronic stress? Do you have like ongoing stress in your life, relational stress? And a lot of dudes just don't know how to process emotion. They've been through a lot of really tough situations and it's like in their dreams. Like, so I would say if you have nightmares frequently of like difficult situations that have happened in the past, that's when you may need to process through those things in therapy.
Yeah, it's good. I'll let you answer this for yourself because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I would assume that you would far rather put someone, if they will be positively affected by low-dose testosterone and a CPAP, you would rather put them on that than an SSRI and anxiety medication or whatever. Like, would that be fair to say?
Well, here's what I would say to that. I would say there is a lot of misdiagnosis that occurs.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people, by the time they get to me, they're already on SSRIs.
Yeah.
And it's just not working.
Right.
And so they're getting referred to me because I'm at a tertiary care center and they're like, okay, this didn't work. This didn't work. This didn't work. Xanax isn't working. My antidepressant's not working. What is going on with me? And as I get a careful history, I'm like, you probably have obstructive sleep apnea and let's check your vitamin D. Let's check your B12. Let's check your testosterone and let's see if there's something else going on. And what I would say to your question is I would treat the underlying pathology.
Sure.
And if it is low testosterone, just from getting old, then absolutely. But if their testosterone is low from chronic stress and partially from the obstructive sleep apnea or partially from, this relational stress, then I really, really encourage them to get into therapy or to get the actual treatment that's needed or strength training.
We seem to, in the medical community in general in the U.S., is to attack the symptom of the problem and not the root of the problem. Is that?
Yeah.
That's sort of what I hear you say. Like you're saying, I'm going to try to find the root of the problem and attack it rather than try to treat a symptom that it doesn't ever fix the root of the heart of the issue.
It takes me 5 minutes to get some symptoms down. Okay, you're depressed. And this is the level of your depression. Like it doesn't take very long for me to get that. It takes me a whole lot longer to figure out what's actually going on with someone.
Sure.
Yeah.
And yet it seems like the medical community in general, it's like, well, look, you got high blood pressure. Let's give you blood pressure meds. Hey, you got high cholesterol. Let's put you on statins. When those are just addressing the symptom of the problem, not the actual problem. So like, why do you have high blood pressure? Right? Like that's something that can potentially be worked on outside of blood pressure meds. But it certainly can be worked on even with blood pressure meds, right? Like regardless.
I have to derail this. There seems to be evidence that testosterone levels are dropping for all North American men across the board of all age groups, right? Have you seen these studies, doctor?
There's also an interesting study that shows only in the US, not in Europe, only in the US, the suicide rates are going up.
Mm-hmm.
Depression rates are going up. and in all age groups.
Mm.
And it's been doing that for the last couple decades. That's interesting. Obesity is going up as well.
There's that. So I want to talk about that. But have you any theories about why testosterone levels are dropping across the board?
I honestly think most people don't move their bodies very much. And, if you work out, if you strength train, your testosterone will go up naturally.
Yeah.
You think that's the primary thing? You don't ascribe to any of these ideas about like
Hormones in the milk or whatever.
or plastics and packaging or whatever.
I don't see any evidence for that, but I'd be open for someone challenging me. I think it's much more basic.
Yeah.
It's people are not moving. People are on their screens more time per day, than ever, and they're not moving around.
Right. Yeah. And so you're not moving around, and testosterone levels are falling, and you might not be moving around because of just how generally stressful life is. And then you mentioned suicide rates increasing and depression rates increasing. I mean, I think it's all the same thing, isn't it? Well, I think these things are related.
They have to be related, right?
Obesity is going up.
Right.
Across the board. It's been going up for the last 20 years. And it's not due to one particular food group. It's just overconsumption, under-exercised, and what they've shown is that as social media has gone up, guess what's gone down?
Movement, exercise,
and actually hanging out with people like in religious groups has gone down.
Is that interacting with actual humans? Yeah.
So what should we expect? There's certain things we were built for. One is movement, right? One is connection with other human beings.
That's good. It's good.
So this brings me to the first intervention we need to have with Reynolds, David.
Oh, God. That's why we're doing this, huh?
Yeah. Dave and I were talking yesterday about how men just don't have friends anymore.
Okay.
Or they have fewer and fewer friends and they have a hard time connecting with them. And I said, that's true. I said, I was supposed to have a phone call with Reynolds just to catch up.
Yeah.
And he flaked out on me. He's such a difficult person to be a friend with. It's so difficult.
It's so difficult.
It's rewarding, but difficult.
No, that's fair.
I'm poking you in the eye, but we are all so busy and then preoccupied by these things that suck up our time.
Sure.
When we're not aware of it, like your precious Instagram, Puder, that it can crowd out those more meaningful interactions that that we need to have with other men.
So let me be transparent and vulnerable here for a second. I'll just talk to Puder for a minute. So first off, I've been in therapy for, since 2010, I think, so pushing 10 years now. I go see a psychologist. She is tremendous. I have never struggled with depression in my life. I'm very high strung, and I certainly have struggled with anxiety. Not paralyzing levels of anxiety, but I've always sort of been a little nervous. In times like yesterday, so right now, my dad is currently in hospice and he is dying, and I've gotten very close to my dad. He's 63, just turned 63. And so he's younger. So he's dying of Lewy body dementia. So,
oh, that's rough.
So dealing with that and lots of business stress, most of which is good, but it's just part of the, having this business that's grown tremendously. And we bought a house last week, and our house went on the market this morning. And so the combination of I'm trying to run, what feels like big business to me, and in the grand scheme of, Forbes wouldn't call it a big business. They call it a small business. It feels like big business to me. And dealing with my dad dying and trying to sell a house and get another one on the market. I've talked about this in therapy. Like, I hear other people say, I'm just so busy, right? They'll say, I'm busy. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think you know what busy means. Like, I literally sometimes feel like I have to go 16 straight hours, don't have time to eat, don't have time to poop, don't have time to train. And so it creates this sort of highway of nervousness in me. I have a real hard time calming down. That parasympathetic nervous system was like non-existent in me. Like, finding that is difficult. So that's what I struggle with. So that's the issue with Scott yesterday. Like, it just more and more meetings popped up. Things got in the way. Here was this thing, and then this thing, and then this thing, and then this thing. And I never sat down and went to the bathroom. I never checked my cell phone. I never turned on Netflix. I did nothing for enjoyment. I love to read. Did none of it, right? I just was nonstop. So that's kind of, and I feel like I'm in survival mode right now with all this stuff. So,
well, first of all, I want to just say, I don't think there's anything more difficult than one, having a parent with dementia.
Yeah.
And then having a parent die. And then in the midst of that, you have a lot of like moving, buying a new house, that is a huge stress in and of itself.
Massive.
It's massive.
Yeah.
It's scary. It's a big purchase. There's lots of scary paperwork. And then on top of that, you are running a pretty big business.
Yep.
I mean, you have your hands full. So, like it's understandable that you're in kind of a fight mode right now.
Yeah.
Hopefully you're not going past the fight mode into where I would say is like where you start feeling spacey or you start feeling disconnected from reality, kind of like it's like a dorsal vagal, dissociative place, because that's what can happen, right?
Yep.
I know a handful of men like yourself who are wired to just go.
Yep.
And it's like, how do you slow down? How do you find, that sort of time where you can turn it off?
Yeah. Yep, that's me. And unwrap that gift for me, baby.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's both, you're probably wired a little bit that way.
Yeah.
But what I would say is, are some of your desires for success, like, is there ever an end to it?
Sure. Yeah.
So, like probably not. You'll probably reach like that point where you have like, 10,000 clients and you'll be like, I think it's time to get 20,000.
Sure. What are you laughing at, Hambrick?
So I think that I probably have shared some of that drive and whatever. And then I'm having the opposite thing, which is I pulled the ripcord and jumped out of the plane December 28th and, don't have anything like that to work on, and been, trying to sort out what a new life for me, what is meaningful and what a new life for me will be, post owning data storage and whatever. And
yeah,
it's jarring. Yeah. I don't even know what my day looks like yet. This is like it's the 27th. So it was 90 days ago I sold that thing, and I still haven't kind of figured out what my routine looks like. It's been really interesting.
I see that kind of thing when people get out of the military.
Yeah.
It's like all of a sudden they have all this sort of unstructuredness to their life. And they're like, what is my purpose? Purpose is so defined before, like I have to do these things to make this business run, right? And it's like now you're kind of just like, your body's coming down a little bit, right? It's like you can rest a little bit more. And I think those seasons are important. So I would say don't feel bad with just having more rest or more unstructuredness or more, kind of that time of not completely having it all figured out.
Matt, you would go nuts. Like all your crazy Protestant work ethic stuff.
What?
You would be out in the backyard digging a hole.
Couple things.
Just to dig.
One is, we surround ourselves, Scott, you and I both, with men who are older and wiser than us. We've always tried to have guys that mentor us, and then we also try to do the same thing for younger kiddos. And in speaking to a lot of my older mentor buddies who have retired, some of them have retired early, like you, if you call what you're doing retirement, after working the main gig for a long time, giving up the main gig and being able to just do a little work on the side as they want to, kind of semi-retirement.
Right.
A lot of those guys will get out of their work and be like, man, I can't wait to play golf or fish or weightlift or whatever the thing is, right? And that sort of is fulfilling on a short-term fleeting happiness scale for, 6 months. And then they're like, okay, now what? Now I'm 54, which isn't that old, which means you got another 30 years, right? And like, now what am I going to do? And they have to find like another set of meaning and purpose for them. By the way, I also heard you say, Puder, this is what I heard you say. I heard you tell Hambrick to, this is a good season in his life and not to be embarrassed about it and everything's okay. And I heard you tell me that I'm f***ed and that...
No. Honestly, Matt, it's tough. You're in a tough season.
Yeah.
What I say to alpha males that are really gunning for it is I say sleep is going to be one of your wins.
Yeah.
So you have to get that necessary amount of sleep.
Yeah.
And that is actually like, you have to think about that as like, this is part of your marathon is getting that sleep.
Yes.
And then what I would also say is like, are you connecting well with your wife, with your kids, saving time that's like off the phone, connecting with them. And then, finding time for friendships, like with Scott here, where it's like, kind of like, okay, we're going to hang out for an hour, get some coffee or, whatnot, and not just talk business.
Yeah.
Dude, I'm telling you, but I have the same exact issue.
No, I get
like,
it. Sure.
I can work 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
Like that's like, if I'm not playing with the kids or hanging out with the wife, like I'm usually working.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I like that.
Sure. I do too.
I don't think I'm going to retire.
Right. Yeah, I'm the same way. I really enjoy the work. And the reality is that the business of all of the stressful things in my life right now, like running the business is the least of those. They're the least stressful because the staff is so good. Let me be clear why. My leadership team and our staff is so amazing. Scott and I were talking about this before we started recording today. When I ran the gym, when Scott had his business, like you had people that really, really had to be managed. And the reality is that most of these coaches that work for me, they don't have to be managed because they're great. We hire really good people and we try to put them in places where their occupation is like their personality supports that. So they do great and they love what they do. Mm-hmm. And so I don't have to stay on top of people. I don't put my thumb on anybody. So like that stress is actually relatively low. It is all the other stuff right now. So I kind of feel like I was telling Scott earlier today, I feel like I've had times in my life, we've gone through a fair amount of really rough times or tragedy or whatever over the past, say, 12 years in my life. Been through some tough stuff. And there have been times when things were so rough and so bad that even though I don't think that anybody would have said I was depressed. You know, you have these days of sort of acute, and you can clearly point to the reason that you're down. Like it's clearly this thing. But there have been times in my life when I look at it, I'm like, I don't know if it's ever going to get better. Where I'm at right now is I see this light at the end of the tunnel and I'm like, man, I'm just in this season right now. Like, you get to this point where you're like, I'm ready for my dad to die now because my dad's suffering. Like he's suffering so bad that now it's like the longer it goes, it's actually worse, right? And I'm ready to be out of this house and in the new house and I'm ready for the things to settle. So I'm like, I don't know if that time is 2 months from now or 4 months from now or 6 months from now. But I feel like there's a time out there that is like, okay, it's less stress, it's more rest, it's more peace. Peace is really like the thing I think that I'm seeking right now. Like I'm searching for like just peace,
Let me ruin your life. So you'll do all of that and then you'll sell your business, you'll have money in the bank and you'll be like, job well done. And you'll be like, ugh. You'll be like,
yeah. No, I get it.
Nothing's worth doing.
I don't know. You and I are. I think we get along so well because our personalities are so different a lot of times. I think if they were wired exactly the same, more similar, we would actually have a harder time.
Right.
We value much of the same things, and so we get along well as friends. But our personalities are starkly different, so we sort of complement each other there.
By the way, you got to get to Tulsa like real quick because JJ's.
I know we got to go eat at JJ's. I know. I saw that. Yeah, it's a big deal. Yeah, anyway, so that's where I'm at, Peter. It makes perfect sense. I know there's sort of this logical, my brain works in a very logical, so it's sort of like I'm in survival mode right now, just trying to get to that light at the end of the tunnel. I think that the worry with guys like me is they get down there that light at the end of the tunnel and they're like, okay, like some of that stress is cast off. Let's do 14 more new things and make a bunch more new stress for yourself. And that really would have been me even a couple years ago. But like I'm actually to the point now where I so deeply desire peace and good rest. And I sleep well. I've got a CPAP. It's changed my life. My CPAP has changed my life. Those sorts of things are important to me. And I told the leadership team and the staff this year, I said, hey, 2018 for Barbell Logic, we launched all kinds of stuff and it worked really well, right? We launched the YouTube channel and the podcast kept going and we did the coaching academy and all that stuff. And I'm like, 2019 is the year we don't launch anything and we just hone in and get good at what we're doing. And so I've committed to my entire staff to do that. I don't want to be a jack of all trades, master of none, and stressed all the time. I just want to be really, really, really good at the niche.
Right. And that would be another sort of thing that I was thinking about for you. It's like, okay, you have a couple things going really well, right?
Yeah.
The podcast is doing really well. The problem that people get into is that they think I have to change it up. Where really, I think you're going to accomplish huge things if you just do exactly what you're doing,
yeah,
but do it for the next 7 years.
Yeah.
It's going to just naturally be successful.
Yeah.
Because you're giving incredible value to people for free all the time.
Yeah, that's a problem.
And no, that's great. That's what we need to do. Actually, talking about like that older person who's retired and they like have a devoid of meaning, tell those people, give value to other people.
Yeah.
Whether that's your grandkids or it's your community. Like Erickson talked about the stage of generativity. It's that like 55 and up stage where, hopefully you found the earlier stages, right? The earlier stages of Erickson are, trusting people, right? Finding something that you're good at, finding intimacy, finding friendships that are meaningful. And then eventually you get to kind of the older age and you're like, now it's the generativity. How can I create value and give value away for free and help people?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the stuff you guys are doing, it's like, it's free.
Yeah.
Like I've never spent any money other than going to conferences.
To a seminar, a conference,
I've learned all that I need to do this out of my garage.
Sure. Yeah.
How is that going for you?
It's going well. Yeah, I enjoy it. I'll tell you what my hack is, because I was asked this by one of my fellow doctor friends. They were like, what's the secret? Like, how are you able to continue doing this like year 3 now? And I'm like, I have 3 to 5 guys show up to my garage.
Yep.
3 days a week.
Yep.
And like, I never don't have those people come to my garage.
Yeah.
Yep.
You can't skip.
I don't skip.
You can't skip.
Yeah.
Everybody's coming to the house.
People are coming over.
That's right.
And that, I would say, if you're a dude and you're like, I don't know, like, here's the big issue, right? Is a lot of the men that come to see me have no friends. Like, and when I mean friend, I mean someone that you could talk to about things that are going on in your life that are stressful on a weekly basis. A lot of my patients have no friends.
Yeah.
It's like they lose the ability. A lot of them think that friends are going to pursue them, or just I think the final common pathway of depression is just being alone as well. So that's why a lot of them at the point that they see me don't have friends, because they just pull back from everything, right? But having people that come to my garage 3 to 4 days a week, 3 days a week, it's like, there you go.
Yeah.
You got your people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big deal. I have my father-in-law and now my brother-in-law, and Charity and I train 4 days a week actually now. And it's it's 4 days a week. They've got that community of people, and it's become more than just squatting. And then I've got this book group of these men that come to my house, and we meet once a month. But then I eat lunch with almost all of them at least once a month as well. And then, like next month, we've rented a cabin, and we're all going to go and stay in this cabin for the weekend and, do nothing, really. Most people don't have that at all, not even a little bit of it. The thing about it, like you said, is they don't come to you. You have to do that. You have to invite people. You have to provide some value too.
If you're listening to this and you don't have any guy friends, I would say,
And you're a guy.
Make a list of a couple dudes that you know that would make good friends, and then call them up, go out to coffee, go out to eat, build a home gym, invite them to your gym, talk about squatting, get them to squat, and build that community. But you have to pursue them. Like, you have to be the one that says, okay, I'm going to call this person once a week until it's very clear they don't want to be my friend,
Right.
But it takes consistency.
Yeah.
And I think the great books and the squatting are great ways to connect with other men. And that's probably why it's been so successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the first things we tell our clients they need when they start strength training is a great weightlifting belt. And Blake and Katie from Dominion Strength Training make the highest quality belts on the planet. Dominion is a wonderful small business, literally 2 people who have spent years refining their craft to personally hand make every single belt on their site as the orders come in. They aren't shipping something that they pull off a shelf, but are actually building your personal order from the raw materials, sewing the belts on these wonderful 100-year-old leather sewing machines that produce a much better stitch in the heavy leather than any of the more modern, lightweight machines. And much of the finish work, especially in finishing the edges, is done by hand. So this just gives your belt a much more aesthetic finish than feeding the belts through a machine. So for the finest quality, artisanal, handcrafted, but heavy-duty belts, all with a lifetime warranty, go to DominionStrengthTraining.com, where you can choose the Barbell Logic 4-inch leather belt or any other high-quality belt there and receive $10 off your belt order with discount code LOGIC. That's DominionStrengthTraining.com, discount code LOGIC for $10 off your belt order. Scott and I have talked about this. We need to get back to, as the businesses have grown, like, we're friends. Like, Scott and I are friends, but most of the time when we talk, we're just venting about the business stuff.
Yeah.
And so we've talked before about renting a place and going to like a lodge or something somewhere, taking the family and the kiddos, maybe podcasting the first day or 2, and then taking the next 4 days and be like, no, we're not talking about business. We're just going to hang out and just have fun. And just, I think that's the problem a lot of times, is these guys that, Scott and I started as just friends. We never talked about business. We never talked about stuff. We talked about whiskey.
Yeah. And then we had to it all up.
And then we were like, man, we're really good friends. We should do business together. And it's worked really well. Like, we have good business conversations, but what's kind of fallen by the wayside is the sociability of those things now, right? We don't talk about whiskey very often. We don't talk about how are the wife and kids sort of stuff as much. So
McKay and I have been talking every time we see each other. We're like, gosh, we need to get a place up at like Table Rock or on Grand or whatever. And me, you, and Reynolds go, or whatever. We hadn't done it.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? As we get busier, plan it out 4 months ahead of time.
You have to.
Yeah.
Just do it. Put it in your calendars once a year or twice a year, Because if you think about it, what has been successful about you guys is your friends.
Sure.
So if you don't foster that and build that and maintain that, that might bleed into the quality of your business. So sometimes when I speak to like the alpha male, you almost have to put it in that perspective, right?
Sure.
Like, you build the friendship and you get the sleep because you need these things to be successful, right?
Sure.
But at the same time, of course, it's like these things in and of themselves are, how we were built.
Yep. Sure.
We're built
That's
for
good.
community. We're not built to be isolated, watching Netflix by ourselves every night for the next 20 years.
I'm really interested in like what the underlying causes in this sort of disintegration of these social groups has been.
I think it's so pleasurable to watch Netflix or to be, the social media is built.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram and Facebook, like if you read like how they are built to stimulate your dopamine, they study poker. They study, like how the brain likes to receive these little dopamine shoots. So one thing, for example, is with Instagram, they don't give you the likes right in the beginning.
That's right.
So they wait a couple hours and then have batches of people that are able to see your picture so that you keep going back to it to kind of observe, oh, who's liking my picture? So these things are built for us to sort of be immersed in them. And because of that, it just pulls us away from the things that actually may be more life-giving, but may take a little bit of effort to get into.
There's a interview that Brett McKay did on the Art of Manliness podcast with Cal Newport. You guys know him from some of his other books like the So Good They Can't Ignore You and Deep Work and all that stuff. But his new book is called Digital Minimalism, and it's Art of Manliness. It's episode 479, and they go through this. Like the podcast episode is called Becoming a Digital Minimalist. It's not about becoming, Amish or something. It's not about like literally getting rid of all digital everything. It's about look at what social media has done to the way our brains think, right? Facebook used to be just this feed where people talked about their lives, and there was actually no Facebook didn't used to have the thumbs up thing. And we all used Facebook on the computer. We didn't use it on our phone. And then Facebook was like, hey, we should do this app because everybody's already on their phone. And now nobody uses Facebook on their computer. They use it on their phone. And then Facebook was like, well, how could we get them to use it all the time on their phone? Wait a minute. We could instill this like thing. And then they're like, you know what else we could do? We could actually make it so that you could tag people like at Scott Hambrick, so that Scott gets a notification every time he's tagged in a picture or in a comment or whatever. And now it's just this constant, I can't wait, Scott and I have talked about this, till the social norm is we all go to dinner and you turn your phone off or put it face down and we all sit and have a dinner and no one picks up their phone at dinner. And that's like, I think there are families and there are groups of friends that will kind of try to make that rule. Like, hey, let's not, we do that. Our family, when we eat dinner, there's no phones. But like, surely the time is coming where the pendulum swings that we get back to the cultural norm is when we're around people, when we're trying to socialize. Like you think about going to a restaurant or going to a social gathering or a party and you look around, 90% of the people in the restaurant or at the social gathering are on their phones even though they're surrounded by real humans. Like that's bizarre and sad to me that that's the thing. I would think that that's the major player in these men coming to you and go like, I don't have any friends. Like, well, you've got an entire world on your cell phone that you're living. Like you're living a double life, like, or not even a double life. You're not even living a real life anymore. You're just living this digital life at this point. Like you said, we're not wired. We're not built that way.
So let me throw in some science here, okay? So there's a study in 2017 of 1,768 adult men and women aged 19 to 32. And they compared the ones that were using 0 to 2 social media platforms with those using 7 to 11 social media platforms. And those with the more social media platforms had 3 times the odds of increased depression and anxiety. 3 times.
Wild.
there's a lot of other studies I've been looking at with this, and I have felt it myself. So I'm standing here and I do social media, and I feel like I need to do less, right? So I don't know. It's like good to talk about because I'm preaching to myself here, but I really need to cut back, and figure out a balance. And one way that I've done that is I've stopped bringing my phone on little dates with my kids. So I just will leave my phone behind. I don't need my phone. When I go out on dates with my wife, it's like, okay, let's put our phones away now and leave it away, you know?
The dopamine I'm getting from those blue eyes right now, it's just amazing. It's just astounding.
No, it's super important for sure. We've talked.
This is the guy last night, Reynolds. He's like, "Oh, dude, you've got to work on your Instagram account."
Well, the answer that I've been able to have there is I hated that stuff. I hate it. I'm almost completely off social media. I don't use it hardly. I don't have Facebook. I mean, I have a Facebook account. There is no Facebook on my phone. Every notification system for social media is turned off. I get no notifications. So I only see things if I decide to open social media. So I'll occasionally open Instagram once or twice a day, and I'll open Twitter usually once a day. And that's it. And that's all I do. But I realize that with business, you have the need, if you're going to grow a brand, you have to have social media. So I just got lucky. And that's why I have Alexis Wolfer, digital marketing genius, and other people that work for us. They just do all this social media. At the point that the brand outpaced me and beat my personal following, it was actually it was this enormous weight lifted off my shoulders. I was like, okay, I don't have to do the social media anymore. I have other people that can do that. And so I've almost been able to rewire my brain to not ever need the dopamine hits. Now, if there's an important video on YouTube, we did the video with Brett McKay on the Art of Manliness channel a couple weeks ago, I was definitely refreshing and looking at comments a lot, looking at those little dopamine hits to see how many people are watching and all that kind of stuff. So I don't want to act like I'm holier than thou and don't fall into it. But that's been my strategy is I have a few of those on my phone, but notifications are completely turned off on all.
I deleted all my Twitter accounts. I had 2 of them. I deleted my Facebook account, and I nuked a bunch of stuff a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. And you bought a Jitterbug.
So good.
Jitterbug.
So good.
You got a Jitterbug phone?
I ordered a light phone.
Did you order the light phone? Do you have it yet or no?
No. Should get it.
Is it like a crowdsource thing? Is that what it is?
Yeah, this is their second phone. So they've made them before. They've had successful launches before. It's on Indiegogo. McKay ordered some too. It's kind of a smartphone form, right? But it has a Amazon Kindle Paperwhite type screen, e-ink screen.
Yep.
And it only has phone, text messaging, and a Maps app on it, and a timer. That's it.
That's cool.
Yeah, and they've reached 1,600% of their funding goal, and they have a history of delivering already. So that's coming pretty soon. I'm excited about that.
That's cool.
What I would say is I do social media for my podcast.
Sure.
And what I've found is I really do enjoy connecting with people and people in mental health, people who aspiring to be mental health professionals all around the world. I think people's attention is there. And so it's hard to launch a brand without being on social media. But I think I'm just trying to get to a place where it's okay, yes, when I put up a post, I'm trying to comment back. I'm trying to interact with people who are interested in, psychiatry and psychotherapy. But when I'm with my kids, when I'm with my family, it's completely off.
Yep.
How do people follow you on social media, Dr. David Puder?
If you just look up David Puder at dr.davidpuder, or if you just look up psychiatrypodcast.com, that's the website. If you just look up psychiatry podcast on Google, it's the number one thing that comes up.
Look at you.
Or in iTunes.
Spell your last name for people. It's
Puder, Puder.
Right.
Puder.
Not like the metal. Said like the metal.
Said like the metal.
But not spelled that way.
But like Pud.
Yeah.
Puder. You know what, Scott? If you want to call me whatever you want to call me, just call it. Just do it.
That's just cool.
We got to have you on the show more often. It's very calming, actually. I'm less stressed and less nervous now after just listening to you talk. So
I'm really glad that, it's funny because I deal with really depressed people all day. And there's it's stressful, especially with a new patient when they're coming in.
Sure.
And it's they're suicidal or their depression is just really, really bad. You can feel that. You can't not feel that, right? The way our brains are wired, we pick up other people's brains to a lesser degree. It's called mirror neurons. It's called empathy, affective empathy. So
Unless you're on the spectrum.
if you're autistic, okay, here's what happens. If you're autistic, so Asperger's, right? Autism spectrum disorder is what it's called now. You have low cognitive empathy, but your affective empathy is average. Okay. So cognitive empathy is the ability to put into words what another person is thinking or feeling and put it back to them. Affective empathy is just to feel it. So people who are autistic, they really do feel what you're feeling. And that's why, like, if parents are fighting, the autistic kid just starts like stemming and stuff like that or gets aggressive, right? But if you're a psychopath, a primary psychopath, your affective empathy is low. So we did an episode on Ted Bundy, and I talked a lot about his low affective empathy because he was a true psychopath. He was a primary psychopath. So you think about it like a bell curve, right? Like affective empathy is like a bell curve in our society. Women tend to be slightly shifted a little bit towards higher affective empathy, men slightly the other way. And psychopaths are like that 1 percentile that's just way over here on the bell curve that don't have affective empathy. So my point with this is men can grow their cognitive empathy and improve their affective empathy as well, I think. But it takes a little bit of training. And that's really what I'm very passionate about. And what I hope to accomplish in my life is to improve people's empathy, because it really does help in every human interaction. It really does.
Yeah, it's good.
So when patients come to me and they experience empathy, eventually they're left with gratitude. And so a lot of my patients, even after they talk about traumatic things, if they feel connection with me, even in the midst of traumatic things that they're telling me, they will feel better. And that's really what makes the change that psychotherapy allows.
I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but the very first session I ever had, I went to a couple not good people first. But as I started to talk to my psychologist that I have now, and I was in a bad spot. This is, again, it was probably 8-9 years ago. I showed up in the office and I sat down and, just verbally vomited all over her. Everything. Here it is, right? Like, you're a doctor. You've heard all this crazy stuff before. I remember walking out of that hour session and getting in my truck and starting the truck and just going,
It's like your brain kind of had a massage.
oh, this is what exactly what everything I talked about was painful. There was nothing fun in the talking. It was just like you'd been holding it all in, right?
How did she make you feel in the midst of that?
Oh, like she made me feel like she was the best listener I ever talked to, and then could repeat back to me what I said to her better than I said it the first time. I mean, that's the thing that makes, and so that calmed me, because often, even people who I think are pretty good communicators, like I would call myself a pretty effective communicator, it often is very difficult to say, here's the thing that I'm struggling with, and really point to, like you said, we will talk about the symptom. I'm nervous all the time. This is the thing, right? But it's very hard to communicate the root of the problem. And so to even though we didn't get to the root of the problem on session 1, because it takes longer than one session to get there, the fact that I knew that there was a professional who listened very well and could repeat back to me what I said and understood what I was trying to say and could communicate it back to me well, made me feel tons better. Just like this burden, I was like, this might actually work. Like, it's going to take some time, but it's going to work. And so, but yeah, I remember it almost felt like a physical weight lifted off my shoulders the first time. And there have been times since then I've gone in. I have lots of those sessions, but I've also had times I go in and I just feel like I got the shit kicked out of me. But I've also seen her 300 times at this point. So every once in a while, you got to have some kind of come to Jesus meetings, and she's pretty good at being very intuitive on when those sessions need to occur.
So what I think the mechanism for change is, and I think you've stated this well, it's really empathy while you talk about things that are distressing congruently. So you're talking about things in a way that's honest to your inner and outer experience is matching, right? And I think a lot of guys, or a lot of people, women have this issue as well. It's like they can't even talk about their experience in a way that's accurate to their experience. So that takes some time sometimes to get there, to teach someone that, hey, it's okay to be angry, or okay, it's okay to feel sad, or it's okay to feel a sense of shame or not wanting to talk about things. And if you can put those things to words and you have someone with high empathy who has some training, then that really changes the memories that are distressing, because you'll bring forth a memory, like a file of a memory, and then you'll insert into that file now the new connection with this individual, this new relationship, the new feelings that you're able to express, maybe that you weren't able to express in something traumatic. That gets put back into the file, that gets put back into your mind. Now you may not have nightmares about that event anymore.
Yeah.
I have a theory that we don't ever really remember things. We remember the last time we remembered it. You experience it once and then you recollect it. And then the next time you recollect it, you're very affected by your other recollections of that thing. Like over time, our recollections of events sometimes don't match what happened. But if we can alter the recollections, I think, and make those less traumatic, then the next time we have that recollection, it's not as jarring or ugly or traumatic as it once was. And so getting to have those recollections, with a guide present seems to help do that. I think that's what happens.
What I would say is a little bit of nuance is, I know you guys love that word. I've seen a lot of vets, and a lot of the vets will tell you part of their story, part of what happened in Vietnam, part of what happened in war, Iraq, or whatever. What they won't tell you is the part that is actually the trauma. So you actually have to feel to some degree what you felt. You can tell a story completely detached from the story. So you have to tell the story feeling to some degree what you felt like in that. And then, yeah, absolutely, then that applies once you go there. But what I see is a lot of people are used to telling a story, but they're not telling it in the way that is either congruent to the actual experience of the story, or they're not telling the part of the story that was actually traumatic. And a lot of the times it's because of shame. So a lot of the vets that I've worked with, the one part of the story was when they hurt someone, like a kid, and they've told everything about the story and they keep repeating everything about the story, but that one part, because the shame and the sort of the guilt that they have is so intense that they just can't go there.
Do you use EMDR in your practice?
No.
What do you think of that?
I refer some people to EMDR. I think it's good for single traumas. And
Hold on, explain what that is really quick.
Okay, EMDR is where the therapist waves their finger back and forth, and you follow the finger going back and forth while you hold in your mind an image of the trauma. Okay. And it's been shown to be better than Prozac for trauma, for PTSD.
Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy.
Yeah. It's a good therapy. What I would say is I think I can do the same thing with just my presence and just the way I listen. And I think EMDR is good because it's structured enough to get someone to go back to the traumas over and over again to process through them. It's one of those things that I wonder, how much, like, what is the working mechanism of EMDR? Is it the kind, compassionate therapist who's allowing you to hold something traumatic in your mind? Is it the movement of your finger? Nowadays, there's this other thing where they do like tapping and stuff. And I had this guy come to me recently and he was like, yeah, there's these goggles you put on and then you change the lights in the goggles and that really helps with trauma. And I think there's another aspect of this that's really important to talk about. It's the confidence of the therapist and the placebo effect.
Sure.
If that's in the room as well, then the therapy may work. But so when they study different types of therapies and they look at the effectiveness of therapies, and I talk a lot about this in my episode on empathy in my podcast, I go really deep dive into it. But when they compare different types of therapies, there are certain therapists in each type of therapy that are a lot better, like 10 times better than the average therapist. And it has nothing to do with the type of therapy that they're doing. I think it has everything to do with empathy, with interpersonal skills, and with the person, the therapist, and the training that led to that person getting to that point. So not all therapists are created equal. And so this, you get what you pay for to some degree. You really do.
So I've been to a bunch and they're not all equal for sure. Like you say, I mean, that jives with my experience. And so if that's the case, then the therapist is, in fact, at least to some degree, if not maybe entirely, the instrument of healing, right? I mean, you take a big part in that. Like, what's that like? Like, how can you do that? You have these people that are suicidal ideation. I mean, they're just, darkly, deeply hurt, and you are exposed to that, and you have to participate in that some way for the time that you're with that person. That's what the empathy is. How do you do that? And then go home and be a person? Like, how does that not wreck you? How do you do that?
Well, sometimes it does wreck you. Sometimes you do think about the people that you treat. And it's hard. I've had a couple of patients. One comes to my mind right now. She was so suicidal. And when I met her the first time, I was like, oh my God, this person may kill themselves. And there's absolutely nothing that I can do. And she was hospitalized. Like multiple times. She went through partial programs. She ended up I run a day treatment program. So it's like people come 9 a.m. to 3 p.m, 5 days a week. I run a program for that. It's part of my job. She came to that for probably about 6 months. And then she just disappeared. And she was still somewhat suicidal, much better, but somewhat suicidal when she left. She gives me an email about 2 years later, and she's doing great. She's moved on with her life. She has a job. Okay. She has like a relationship. She's doing great. And it's like, whoa, like I never saw that. So I always have hope for people. So I think that helps me when I meet with someone who's really suicidal, is I have hope for them. I have hope that they can be different, because I've seen the worst of the worst get into much better places in life. And I think I've also trained my brain to be able to be curious about when I start to feel depressed when I'm with someone. So here's a good example, Scott. So for you, let's say you get an email from a client who's like, hey, Scott, I'm feeling really depressed. I'm feeling suicidal. These are all the things going on in my life, right? And you're reading this, or let's say you're in person and someone's saying this, and you start to feel somewhat different, right? You start to feel a little bit of that depression. Start to think about how you're feeling different. That ties in your thinking part of your brain, which takes you out of that pure like emotional side, right? So you start to think about how you're feeling different in the moment. And then I start to think about, what can I do to help this person? So I move into a place of from empathy to compassion. And so then I use my words of empathy, because I know that the empathy is going to be the treatment most of the time. So I'm watching their facial expressions. I'm watching for micro expressions of emotion. And I try to put words to what they're feeling and put it back to them and allow them to feel at least heard and understood, because the worst type of depression is to feel alone in your depression. So if I can help someone feel a little bit more heard and understood and present, then at least they're not alone in the midst of the horrible state that they feel, right? And so what happens though is, as you continue to give that empathy, they feel better. And then you feel that difference, right? In that sort of emotional experience yourself. So I think empathy is the key. Like empathy is the key for me not getting burned out. If I give empathy and give it and give it and give it, then the person feels connected. And when they feel connected with me, they feel better and they feel grateful. And then I feel that. I feel that gratitude. I feel that connection myself. And then that gives me dopamine.
So you just keep swiping right on these people and looking for those dopamine hits. And
It's like psychology Tinder. That's what it is.
So I told David last night, Reynolds, about some of these emails we get. And, he gets them too, I think, at this podcast. These people, they're like, couldn't have any kids, got all this debt, got this job I don't like, stuck. What do I do, coach?
Yeah, all the time.
We get
Like
we have some emails that are, I don't even want to read any of them because they didn't send them to us for that. So I was telling David, in these email, if everything you say about empathy being both the answer for the client and for you, if that's true, there's not a good way to do that in an email.
Well, what I would say is your first 2 lines should be, I hear you're in a really tough place, and reflecting on what you said makes me feel, like some sadness for you on your situation. And then I would say my 3rd line would be, thank you for reaching out to me.
Yeah.
I value that you hear the podcast, you value what I say enough to give you some input in this.
So when I email them back and say, hey, thanks for listening to the show, give us 5 stars on iTunes and then let a friend know, that's not the right answer?
That's not the right answer.
Oh.
No. Hey, and by the way, no, what I would say is maybe your first 2 lines empathy, your third line maybe something like, thanks for valuing, this. And your fourth line is like, hey, have you considered seeing a therapist? Have you considered having a doctor run some labs, give you a checkup? And here's an episode that I did with Dr. Puder, who's a psychiatrist.
Right.
And he talked about some of the things like testosterone and sleep apnea and therapy. I would check this out, right? I get people that send me messages and I'm like, oh crap. Like, okay, do I enter into a doctor-patient relationship by responding to this?
Sure.
Right.
Is that going to get me sued if I give them bad advice? And so I usually say something like, hey, I can't give you formal advice because I'm not your physician. But the very little that I know about your life from what you've shared with me makes me think that you might benefit from X, Y, or Z. Just going through the basics, right? So I had like a 16-year-old reach out to me who's like, boyfriend is cheating on her and stuff. It was like obvious, like, dude, you should leave this guy because he's going to continue to cheat on you. But, if you tell a 16-year-old that even in session, usually they don't leave the guy, right? So,
right.
Empathy, hey, it sounds like what you're going through is really tough. And sounds like there's some things that, you may need to talk about. Have you considered seeing a therapist? And she's like, okay, yeah, I'll go see a therapist, So I don't know.
Matt, what I'm hearing here is that Puder's just a lot nicer than I am.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, you would. I hear what you're saying. A lot of the emails that we get, or that I get in particular, aren't necessarily about that. I mean, they're very pragmatic. Like, I love my job, but I can't pay my bills. I don't know. Maybe they didn't. Maybe somebody like that needs to go see a mental health care professional, but
maybe they need to listen to some, good budgeting
right
podcasts or something. You can't pay your bills. You're working, right? Okay. Are you overspending?
Sure.
Or
the thing that upsets me the most about these emails, and not that they just wreck my ass or anything, but I get them and I'm like, there's 7 billion people teeming on the face of the earth. And we're the ones getting the emails. It's like, there should be other.
You mad?
It doesn't make me mad. It's that there should be somebody else in their life that they would contact.
Although the first thing I feel is the thing that Puder was talking about. I feel like an incredible sense of gratitude that somehow we have connected with people enough via a podcast, having never talked to this person in person, that they still feel connected with us. Some of the things that we've said have resonated enough that they would reach out with these like really big deals. And I also understand what you're saying. I'm sure you feel the same, but then your next thought is, why is it that some guys that you listen to a podcast are the people that you feel most connected with? Why is there not someone else you feel more connected with, like close friends or mentors or a doctor or a psychologist or whatever?
Yeah. So we're back to the friends thing, We're back to the support group thing.
I think what Scott is feeling is the burden of their difficult situation. And Scott, I think you're probably naturally have some empathy for these people.
Sure.
It just seems like that kind of weighs on you. And so I would say is, can you hear them without taking responsibility to fix them?
Sure.
So that's where I would start. Can you have some boundaries in your mind of like, okay, this person is reaching out. I'm a podcast host. I have some insight on life. I've read the classics. Can I not take on the burden of their life while still listening to them? So I think that's where like people don't understand that empathy is not taking on the burden and the responsibility for someone else's life.
Right.
And that's like one of my core beliefs is like, no, you're responsible for your own emotions. You're responsible for your own finances. You're responsible for your own life. But if I can help you in some small way, I'll help you.
Yeah. He just said it again.
What did I say?
That you're a nicer guy than me.
Huh?
That you're a nicer guy than me.
No.
Yeah.
No, I think it's just a little bit of it's like
it's not the burden of the individual email. The thing that bothers me is that people seem to be quite alone. It's not one email. It's all of them are a symptom of how alone these people are. And that's what we were talking about earlier about these men that you come to you and they have no friends.
Okay. So that really bothers you.
That does.
I see.
Yeah.
So you feel bothered more by the, just that some person could feel so isolated and alone.
Yeah. So weird.
Weird times.
That's one of the reasons why we do the online great books thing and these seminars and these groups, and these people end up doing meetups and, creating these social groups out of it. It's a big, big, important thing. And I hope so, I don't know, we've gone an hour here almost. So I hope some people will make that list, like you said, of these people that might make good friends and invite these people to coffee or over to the house to train or whatever and start putting their social groups back together. And recognize that the social groups that they partake in on social media aren't actually real. They're not.
They can be a starting place, though, because I've made real friends through social media.
Yeah, I haven't sat in a room with you yet. You're on the list.
I guess we did meet through...
I met Puder in Wichita Falls, but Hamburg, you didn't, I guess, right?
I hadn't been in the room with him.
Yeah.
I'm a little worried about it, though, man.
He's really tall. He's taller than you'd think.
I'm really worried about it.
Worried about?
Yeah, like... when I'm actually in the room with those eyes, what will I do? Yeah, it's too much.
You have to walk it off.
Oh man, I'm turning like red over
Look
here.
how red he did turn red. It's awesome. You made a psychiatrist blush and turn red.
Oh man,
good. Tell everybody one more time how to find your show. I think they should, if nothing else, go listen to the one about Bundy.
Did you like that one? Did you hear that one?
Yeah, Charity listened to it, and so I was in there listening with her.
It was sort of in response, right? They had the big Bundy Netflix documentary that came out, right? And then you talked about it more on a psychoanalysis.
So I decided to kind of engage what was going on in the Netflix, the new documentary. So we watched it, and I actually had on a guy who works with violent sexual offenders when they get out of jail. So this is all he does every day. And he's really, really good at it. So I had him on, I had a therapist on, and I had a couple medical students on who work with me. Yeah, we just had a dialogue. It was 2 hours, but it was like really interesting.
Very cool.
Can you imagine, Matt? Like when I grow up, I'm going to work with violent sex offenders when they get out of the joint. Hey, I'm glad. But I mean, gosh, it takes all kinds, man.
Yeah, but talk about a hard job.
Yeah, I'll just teach people to squat, I think.
So yeah, it's the Psychiatry and Psychotherapy podcast. If you just Google David Puder, it'll come up. Or if you find me on Instagram, there's a link to it. And yeah, I would say shoot me a direct message if you have any questions from the session on Instagram or through my website. You can shoot me a message. I don't mind responding to messages.
Because he's nicer than Scott.
I respond.
No, I know.
Yeah, I respond.
Actually, you probably respond more than I do.
Oh, gosh, there's another show. Go subscribe to Puder's podcast. Did you know, Matt Reynolds, that he is actually written on a prescription pad for people to listen to Barbell Logic?
Really? That's cool.
I did it last night. Or yesterday.
Thanks,
I did it yesterday.
Prescription strength advice.
I think it's a good place to start. I had a patient who depressed guy, stays in his bed or on media all the time. And I said, hey, start at episode 1 and just while you're on bed, listen to it and learn about how to get strong. One thing we didn't really talk about, but it's probably the big deal. Strength training is really good for depression. I mean, the effect size is like really amazing. It's better than cardio. It's better than yoga.
Is it better than Prozac?
There's never been a study where they looked at one compared to the other, so I can't say. What I would say is for severe depression, like if you're struggling with suicidality and stuff, medications can make a big impact. If you have mild to moderate depression, I would start with therapy and I would start with strength training, 100%. And a lot of people who come to me are so depressed that they just can't start strength training. They just have no motivation to do it. So what I do is I get them undepressed through meds, and then I get them strength training and then get them off of meds. But if they want to get off meds, I say, look, you need to do lifestyle stuff. You need to have friends. You need to have social community. You need to exercise. You need to eat healthy. And once you're doing those things, we'll taper you off the meds. So that's what we do.
Prescription strength.
It's outstanding.
Also for fibromyalgia.
Don't open that can.
No,
Don't
you
give
guys
me-
speak with no empathy for people with fibromyalgia. Actually, my treatment program.
Wait a minute. Do people have fibromyalgia, or does that?
Is that a real thing?
Yeah. No,
Is it a real physical thing?
Okay. They've looked at people with fibromyalgia in the MRI, and their pain centers light up 10 times more than the normal brain for pain.
Yes.
I don't
So
doubt that a bit.
They are experiencing pain in their brain 10 times more. And
Wild.
exercise and strength training is part of the solution.
Sure.
So you guys need to, rather than make fun of it, right?
No, that's good. I'm sure you're right.
You guys need to talk about how, no, actually, if you struggle with chronic back pain, you probably need to squat and deadlift.
For sure.
Yeah. That's a hard sell, though, man. It's been beaten into them that they can't do those things.
But trust me, I have this conversation so often.
Yeah. Sit at home on the couch, eat the opiates. That makes your back feel better. Except that doesn't work for anybody long term.
Most back pain is muscle spasms. And most muscle spasms will get better if your muscles are stronger.
Sure.
So if you're walking around and you have never done any exercise for the past 5 years, any little thing is going to make your muscle spasm, so you're going to have pain. And people say, well, there's I have a protruding disc or this or that. Well, athletes have more protruding discs and more back stuff on MRI than the average population, but they have less pain. So yeah, I'm passionate about it. And, I would say start low and go slow. Start low and go slow and talk to your doctor.
Yeah.
Well, get your testosterone checked, maybe. Go get some friends, definitely. Go train, definitely. Go get a little tune-up. Go see your local mental health professional. Never hurts. And subscribe to Barbell Logic and tell a friend, hey, the good doctor prescribes it. You should too. So let your friends know about our show and pass the word around. That's how we grow the show. And thanks so much for listening.